For Sunday, May 21st, you found the Georgia gang. Topping our agenda today, everyone is on the attack in the 6th Congressional District. In DeKalb County, the sheriff is on defense. And in DeKalb County again, here comes another tax increase. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia gang starts now.
And we're glad you could be with us. We are joined today by Theron Johnson, sitting in for Jeff. Theron, glad you're here.
Thank you. Good to be here. Good to be back.
Good to be back.
Good.
Yeah. We're going to talk about you in a minute. Now, this is where I generally attack the lead story of the day, always. And of course, with us, it's usually politics. But I'm going to say that for anyone who perhaps doesn't live in the 6th Congressional District of Georgia, the biggest story of the week, without equal, is the loss to the Braves of Freddie Freeman.
Uh-oh.
Now, we're not a sports broadcast,
No.
but I would say that if you look at interest out there, if you look at, we'd have one congressional race in one district. We have some shenanigans in DeKalb. We have some little things going on around the state. The loss of Freddie Freeman, who was on a record-setting pace, on pace to hit 63 homers. Now, we know it's early. This is a blow to the Braves and to the city of incalculable proportions.
Well, I agree. We were just on the cusp of making the Braves great again.
Oh, dear.
And then look what happened.
But look,
We're in trouble.
Freddie, you're right, Dick. I mean, listen, I had a chance to go to a few games. I mean, he was hitting home run after home run. But the good news is that he came out this weekend and basically said that he's on the road to recovery. I think they're anticipating about 10 weeks.
10 weeks?
He's going to miss,
yeah.
But with this day and age of science and technology and
I thought
people.
you were saying the good news is he came out to vote for John Ossoff.
Oh, well, we hope he votes for Ossoff, but hopefully he'll be back sooner than 10 weeks predicted.
But 10 weeks, the Braves, I sort of put them down at the end of last week's broadcast because I thought they were reverting to form.
Yeah.
And they made me look bad. They won a bunch of games in the last week. And Freddie Freeman was stroking the ball all over the ballpark.
But this is an opportunity for someone else on the team to step up now. I mean, Freddie has been carrying these guys, but they got a lot of talent on that team, and I think that they'll be just fine.
Oh, gosh. You are
Let's be optimistic.
Hey, I'm optimistic. I got my optimistic blue on
Okay.
today.
You are so much more optimistic than I am. I wish I
beginning of the season too. Come on.
To dust off an old word, I wish I could feel so sanguine. But all right, so Freddie Freeman is gone 10 weeks, broken wrist, just for the record. Now let's get back to what everybody is living and enduring. The race for Congress in the 6th Congressional District. It is now officially the most expensive campaign ever run for the U.S. Congress. It is also inescapable. Theron, you made the point before we went on the broadcast that if you don't know there's a congressional election, you're in a coma.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're not looking at television, if you're not in your car, listening to radio, and if you're not, looking at Georgia gang. I mean, during our broadcast, during the commercials, both sides are basically campaigning. But what's very interesting, and I want to give John Ossoff a big plug before Phil starts to go in and talk bad about him, is that I have been saying publicly I want him to really be bold, and he's done that. He's run a really good campaign. I think we all agree. But the way that he's slowly but surely interjecting women in his campaign and talking about issues that matter to women, not just only in the 6th Congressional District, but all over the state of Georgia. And he's had some really good ads around small businesses. And I know that there's been an effort for him to really beef up his ground game. I think that this is going to be all about turnout on June 20th. And I think the person that can turn out the most voters will be victorious on that day.
Well, Phil, let me respond before you can, because this
You're supposed to be the host.
Well, I know, but I'm going to give you an opening here.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree. Ossoff has run a wonderful campaign. I've said that. I think there are some huge holes in it, which I hope to get a chance to discuss. But the turnout effort is pretty astounding. I'm in the district. You're in the district. You see it. They are registering voters thanks to a federal judge. That's unheard of in a runoff. We also now have an Ossoff with an absolutely dishonest attack ad against Handel, done by a sort of an OBGYN from Smyrna, I believe, who looks like an elf. Have you seen her
Oh,
yet?
that's cruel.
Well,
I think her name is Mindy.
Mindy.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Mindy
She
just
doesn't
kind of
look
looks
like
like
her.
an
I've
elf.
seen the ad, and it's a
Yeah.
dishonest
It's
ad.
dishonest.
It's a dishonest ad. And even the liberal Atlanta Journal-Constitution called out John Ossoff the other day for lying about Karen Handel's record with regard to stopping cancer screening with Planned Parenthood when she was with the Komen thing. Even the AJC called him out on the lie.
It was because of the defunding recommendation.
It was a lie. What the ad is a lie.
But did she not recommend to Alexis Point for it to be
was the
defunded?
board. It
She
was the
did.
board of Komen, and they're the one that decided. But let me go back to your point. I will agree with Theron. I will agree with Theron on turnout. If we're going to analyze this race objectively, that's the key. I think both sides, Dick, are doing a great job. We discussed this a little bit before the show. Both well-oiled machines, I think, at this point, in terms of targeting their votes.
Lots of money.
Lots of money. And I was heartened, Dick, and I know you probably want to talk about this. We had a state senate election runoff just the other day in East Cobb County. I was very heartened that the winner, Kay Kirkpatrick, the Republican, got 50% of the vote.
Yeah, she didn't quite.
I was pleased with the turnout, though. Again, turnout is the key.
But also, if you're going to bring up that race, the Democrat in the race had a 3% increase as well. I think that's a good sign to see that there are some people who are willing to vote for a
You've been
Democrat.
saying that about statewide races for the last 3 cycles. Oh, they're increasing.
Well, hey, you got to.
They're still losing.
I think the numbers show, and you guys have talked about it on your publication, Inside Advantage, about the demographics that are growing. I think that if you look at the voter turnout numbers
No doubt
in the
about it.
Ossoff race, you have seen people of color in your Sandy Springs, Roswell area voting, and I think in Dick's area where he lives in DeKalb, particularly in Dunwoody, there are a lot of new voters that are people of color in those
I wouldn't
areas.
assume that they're all Democrats, because a lot of
say that,
these
yeah.
are middle to higher income people of all races. And I will admit, in your neck of the woods of North DeKalb, there's a problem for the Republicans.
Well, there is, and it's called Trump. And we can
I was gonna say, that's a big problem.
That is the problem hanging over the whole race, which should be a Republican victory by just based on form and voter registration and so
Tradition.
forth. It should be, but it's not. The problem is Trump. The problem is not Karen Handel. The problem is not the brilliant campaign run by John Ossoff. It's Donald Trump.
You know,
And
Dick, I'm going to disagree with you, because I think no matter what problems we're having in D.C., Tip O'Neill
see, that
once
goes
said
to
it.
the women vote, Phil.
Well, it goes to a lot of the politics are local, and I do think that some of the air has gone.
How can they
out
be
of the-
local? Ossoff doesn't live in the district.
Well,
He
that was
can't
my
be local.
point. That's my point. And a lot of people don't like the fact that he doesn't live in the district. And Republican Karen Handel is really hammering the fact that she was a very good Fulton County Commissioner. I think she was a pretty good Secretary of State. You could argue all day, but she is there and knows the people.
Yeah, but Phil, for the Speaker of the House, third in line to be President of the United States of America, comes to town and does a fundraiser and a sort of town hall meeting for Karen Handel, and there's no mention throughout the entire time that he speaks about President Trump. Shows how unpopular he is in this district, and I think that's why you don't see.
You're a political consultant. It is true that Marco Rubio carried that last year in the
Yeah,
Republican
we haven't seen
primary.
Marco
Well,
since.
he's coming.
But I
He's
tell you
coming.
what, you're forgetting conveniently that Trump was here just 3 weeks ago for the NRA convention. Karen had wonderful words to say. I think, from what
And
I
that's
see,
the problem.
from what I see, the Republicans united. I go to Republican meetings a lot. I know a lot of the Never Trumpers from last year. They've
gotta get
changed,
out.
Dick, because of what the Supreme Court pick of Neil Gorsuch. All Republicans and centrists like that.
Yeah,
Wow.
I read it so differently, but we've got a few more weeks to talk about it. We've got to get out on this. I won't have time to tell you. Well, I'll just tell you, Sally Yates says she won't run for governor.
Yeah.
Of course, she didn't talk to the local press because she's no longer from here. She's now a prisoner of Washington. She says she has a national voice. Oh,
She
please.
does have a national voice, and I'm one of many people that are disappointed that she's not going to run, but we'll have a good field of
Very,
candidates.
very quickly, Dick, is it true that maybe John Barrow may be looking at
I
this
think
race,
my-
the
my
Democrat, the
fellow-
last white
Last-
Democrat congressman from Augusta?
My fellow,
separated at birth from you.
That's right.
Looks like you.
but the fellow Athenian is thinking about doing something statewide. I wouldn't say that it's governor or something like that, but
I wanted you to make news on the
right,
broadcast.
we gotta get out.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
All right.
We could do
But you did
Ossoff.
hear it here first.
We could do an hour on the Ossoff
Isn't
handle
it
race.
sad you have to find these discarded politicians and try to clean them up and run them?
All right, let's get out.
That ain't
Like
Karen
Karen
Handel?
Handel?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Well, let's get out. When we come back, the more mundane news of the week. Hey, a new park in Atlanta. A new sheriff in DeKalb? Probably not, but a new tax in DeKalb? That looks certain. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
I just mentioned that we could do an hour on the Ossoff handle race, but we can't. So now we have to talk about a subject that is not nearly as pleasant or as interesting, but that is the DeKalb County Sheriff Jeff Mann, who was stopped in Piedmont Park in a prowling zone for anonymous sex. I don't want to get much further into the details, but he keeps, through his lawyer, protesting his innocence. There are very few voices asking him to resign. The latest one failing to do that is Michael Thurman, the chief executive of DeKalb County, who said, well, he's troubled by it, but he didn't call for him to resign.
Well,
and the governor seems to be pressuring Mann pretty hard, Phil.
Well, you're right. I think probably the Atlanta Journal-Constitution isn't interviewing the people who want him to resign, but you talk to any law enforcement person in this state, and they all think he's a disgrace to the badge, and he is, and that he should resign immediately. I was glad our colleague Jeff Dickerson said that last week. And also, you're right, the governor obviously has set up a commission. I think he could be stripped of his certification. We've talked about that. And the fact that he ran from the police is an outrage.
Well, let's not. No, it's a correction, Dick and Phil. What CEO Michael Thurman said is exactly the same thing that Governor Deal said. What did both of them say? They said that, one, this is a legal process, and they both respect the rule of law. And what they said was that you're innocent before proven guilty in this great country that we call America. You know, and I know, Phil, sometimes you don't believe in democracy.
We don't need to hear your civics lectures. Of course, we all know that.
My point
Are
is,
you in favor of keeping him as sheriff?
So what I'm saying is,
you're in favor of keeping him as sheriff.
They both are constitutional officers in DeKalb County. What the CEO basically came out and said was, let the process play itself out. He also said that it was disturbing. He didn't walk away from that, but to come on the show and say that he's not doing the same exact thing that Governor Deal is doing, which is, yes, Governor Deal appointed a panel to investigate the matter, and the CEO is saying, let the process play itself out. But what he also said is that don't let this one incident derail the progress that they've made in DeKalb County. And more importantly,
so you're not for him resigning.
No, but more importantly,
okay,
the men and
Alexis,
women.
Let me ask you, Alexis. You know, it's a troubling personal matter.
Right.
I heard somebody joke, but not really joke, that Jeff Mann should either resign or come out of the closet. And I mean, that's blunt and cruel and whatever, but in this day and age where the National Democratic Party and what we now call LGBTQ, and there's even a new one, all these other special interests seem to believe that it's an open range on sex, of public, private, between and among anyone. How can we then condemn Jeff Mann for what he did?
I don't know what you're talking about exactly, but what I think that's a whole different subject between what happened with Jeff Mann and gay rights and gay issues and sex and sexual orientation.
I actually agree, Dick. I think we're talking about the breaking of the law.
That's why you're talking about him running.
Right.
To avoid the other question. That's why everybody's talking about him running.
Well, running and also cruising. I mean, that's not.
Well, we're talking about laws that are being broken.
But let's put it on the table. What Dick is saying is, listen, that's the one thing that a lot of people are talking about. I mean, when we are off the show and people come to us for our, sort of interpretation of what happened, yes, that's the one thing that a lot of folks are questioning.
Sure.
But what I was also going to say is that
it makes them queasy.
Yeah, but this should not, affect the ability for these hardworking men and women who are on that sheriff department, who come to work every single day, not to protect the sheriff, but to protect the people that they're there to serve. I just think that the department has got to come out and figure out a way to move forward, and don't let this incident.
Well, can he still function as sheriff? Let's change the subject from Jeff Mann to Michael Thurman, because he's got a heck of a job succeeding Burl Ellis. And it's funny, he's sticking to the basics. He talks about water and sewer and all that sort of thing. This week he began the process of selling the voters of DeKalb County on another 1-cent sales tax to put DeKalb right up there with Atlanta in the tax game. And it would be for roads and paving and that sort of thing. Raise $100 million. I will state my continual reservation with that, which is I thought road paving was in the budget. But when you have a 400-mile backlog of unpaved roads. You haven't been doing your job. Anyway, Michael Thurman's pushing that.
Right.
I think it's probably going to pass. And it will mean homeowner property tax relief too, which I think is important.
By
to
the way,
mention.
just to spread this out to all around Metro Atlanta, which we all we all are in favor of transportation upgrades, especially after the I-85 mess.
Correct.
But Fulton County, Dick, is doing the same thing, and of course,
right.
you know, passed a tax increase. I think one of the only tax increases that'll go in Metro Atlanta and other areas of Georgia is probably for transportation, though.
But let's also say it's 5 years, over 5 years, for $500 million in tax increase, but it really to improve the paving on the roads. But let's also give Senator Fran Miller an opportunity to get some credit here, because what you really saw is that you saw the DeKalb County delegation working with Republican Fran Miller, and the governor is signing a bill with the delegation working with the commission to basically try to improve transportation in DeKalb. And so I think that, you know, they're moving in the right direction, and this is a very monumental
we
occasion.
got to get out,
Right.
Phil. I
And-
got to.
And we need to fill some potholes in the city of Atlanta too.
Let me correct you gently, Phil. The difference is in Fulton County, they're talking about new roads.
Right.
And mitigating congestion.
Right.
In DeKalb, they're just talking about paving
Right.
roads.
I just
and
wanted to get
fixing
in my
potholes.
Fulton County.
No, but you're right.
Right.
But I'm trying to say this is a little bit of a different issue. There's a little bit more in DeKalb we're not going to have time to get to. Let us go to this last break and regroup and see what comes out on the other side.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
And please don't forget, you can find us on YouTube on our own channel there if you miss our broadcast. We're going to stay in DeKalb just for a minute. I want to mention the Stonecrest project, not the new city of Stonecrest, but the project that I'd raised an eyebrow at for a truly regional soccer center and sports center adjoining Stonecrest Mall. That was fleshed out and given a huge amount of credibility this week when Emory Healthcare, Alexis said they're going to build a facility there.
Right.
That means it's a go to me.
Sounds like it. That's some money
They're gonna
down, and they
expand the
got
mall.
money to do it, right?
Yeah, so I think
That's a good
that's.
thing.
I've mentioned this before. You know, Atlanta can't host even the state championships. We don't have a soccer center big enough to do regional
Right.
events. So I think that's good. And you mentioned Dunwoody. DeKalb just can't get it right. They set up early voting sites, added to the early voting sites, okay? And they needed to because of that huge turnout for the Ossoff race. So they added sites in Tucker and South Brookhaven and Chamblee, and they kept the one they had in Dunwoody. But they went for 3 weeks of voting at the 3 early voting sites in Ossoff country and 1 week of early voting in Dunwoody.
But Dick Williams rode to the rescue. I did see a piece in
Yes.
your own newspaper,
Yep.
The Crier.
Good piece.
And I believe that you righted a wrong.
We've righted the wrong. I talked to the DeKalb Election Board, State Senator Fran Miller. You mentioned him. He was on it like that. And now everybody gets to vote for the same length of time. We have true equality. We have no discrimination against the people of Dunwoody.
There you go.
And life is good on that score. Governor Deal, this past week, kind of after we taped, went all in again, Phil, on expanding the Port of Savannah. But this time was more state money. I was interested to see that.
That's right. You know, the state has stepped up in recent years with regard to this Savannah Port expansion project.
Right.
And we're dredging, as you know. This is a major port for America. It's not just an economic issue for Georgia, but it's also a national security issue. So the governor and the legislature are going to be stepping up again. And of course, the only thing I can think of right away that the congressional delegation of Georgia is united on in a full measure is federal expansion of the funds.
Well, and
too.
maybe President Trump's big public works infrastructure thing that he's talked about.
I think this
could
could
be
happen.
part of that.
I think this
If
could
it
happen.
happens. Yeah, and I suspect that now that the Republicans are in charge federally, that has given the state more.
Well, let me just say what the Trump administration has done right in this area. We had Elaine Chao, the transportation secretary,
Yes.
here just the other day, and the governor said within 24 hours we got $10 million immediately for the fixing of the I-85 bridge collapse, and also 90% of that is going to be done by the Fed. So I hope you praise the Trump administration. Government can work with an efficient businessman.
And especially the federal government can help states that need help when
well,
they
in
need help.
emergencies, I think everybody, liberal or conservative, would agree with that.
But let's also, let's give, Senator Saxby Chambliss, when he was in the Senate, and Johnny Isaacson as well, credit for pushing the envelope, and even Jack Kingston, who's a fellow guy who's on broadcast.
He was on appropriations.
He was on appropriations, and even John Barrow, who you mentioned earlier, and then let's not also forget Mayor Reed, who, when President Obama was in office as president, he was the person that Governor Deal looked to be able to go to the White House to have those conversations.
Let me jump right on that. Thank you, Theron, and go to you, Alexis. Mayor Reed, this past week, opened a huge new park by the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That thing looks gorgeous.
It does. Cook Park.
After Rodney Cook, the former alderman and mayoral candidate. And it's beautiful. It's what a nice gateway to the stadium when it opens, huh?
I think it's going to be fascinating. It's 16 acres along Joseph E. Boone Boulevard, and their groundbreaking was scheduled for Friday morning to take place, and it's going to have a tribute to civil rights people,
kind of a theme.
icons. Yeah, it's going to have a peace park. I mean, it's really going to be tremendous, and hopefully it's going to be.
Now, is that where the statue of Chief Tama Gigi is going to go?
Yes, I think that was the early plan. I'm not sure if that's continuing, but that was one of the early plans. But also, a lot of people who led the civil rights movement, like Julian Bond, John Lewis, who are in that area on the west side, are going to be recognized with these statues and monuments.
Well, I just thought it was interesting because that's always been kind of a cluster down there, a jumble of buildings and so forth.
Right.
And the aerials of that were quite striking. And now I can finally mention, wait till you see that big statue of that bird in front of that new stadium.
Well,
that's going to be fun, too.
That's right.
Remember, we didn't get to that.
Well,
all right, when we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And I'll start us off with Theron, but not before I make him the winner of one of my winners of the week. Theron, you've opened your own shop, Paramount Consulting Group. Yeah. You're going to do campaigns, elections, public policy, strategy. Good for you.
Thank you so much.
The spirit of entrepreneurship lives even on the Democratic side of the aisle.
Well, what's so unique is that a little poor country boy from Athens, Georgia, in a state like this, can go out on his own and pursue his dreams. And I got to give a big shout out to my former colleagues, Chuck McMullen, Blake Ashby, and also Ernest Greer at my former firm, Greenberg Traurig. So I'm very excited about this new opportunity.
Okay, winners.
My winner is really the DeKalb County voters. I think that they came together and they're figuring out how to move forward with this whole early vote talks. And also, I got to make the DeKalb County Commission and DeKalb County delegation working together to get the e-host. My loser, because we can get a chance to talk a lot about him today, but it's got to be President Donald Trump. I mean, raise your hand if you think that President Trump is going to make it to 2020.
Oh, for goodness sake. The usual left-wing propaganda.
But I think when you look at, we're talking about
That's
obstruction,
absurd.
And we're talking about abuse of power. These are all impeachable offenses. If proven, these are all impeachable offenses.
All right, Phil, talk fast.
Donald Trump, the winner. Elaine Chao, the transportation secretary, the winner. You're never going to hear anything positive about Donald Trump or objective, but he does good sometimes, he does bad sometimes. And I do want to say that the loser is Mayor Kasim Reed in the Atlanta City Council on what? Police pay. Wallet Hub did a study that's been publicized. Georgia's 43 in the nation on poor police pay and that they're unhappy. It's very sad. We could have a raise right now, Dick. The sale of Underground, where's all that money going to? Let's have a raise for the Atlanta Police Department.
Well,
they're very underpaid, and I talk to the cops all the time.
But it's also the police outstate all around this state who are vastly underpaid.
Right. The troopers got a raise. That was good.
That's good. All right, Alexis.
Okay, I'm going to salute.
Hey, wait a minute. You got an award.
I did.
Congratulations. I'll make you a winner, too.
Thank you. It was
for working with senior citizens.
And it was being recognized as a working senior citizen.
I didn't want to say that. I'm glad you did.
No, that's great. It was me among 15 other people who were recognized.
Young.
That's what I said. I was one of the young seniors.
That's why I phrased it the way I did.
All right, thanks. Also, I want to recognize City Councilman Ivory Young, Mayor Reed, Arthur Blank, and Rodney Cook Jr. for taking the leadership on making this new park happen. So congratulations to them. Also, Orrin Hudson, founder and chief of Be Someone, has a leadership chess camp coming up on June 5th, where he says if you give him your kids for 5 days, he'll change their life. Make him a winner on the chessboard and a winner in life. And AARP, speaking of that, in Georgia announced the completion of the age-friendly Atlanta Action Plan. So it's going to make life better for all us seniors.
Yeah, the Democrats. All right, Jiminy Christmas. I'll make a winner of the new Skyline Garden. The Atlanta Botanical Garden has added something called a Skyline Garden. It's gorgeous too. This new little bits and pieces of green space in our great city are terrific. The losers, the Reinhardt College softball team, oh, did they get hosed by the NAIA, the small college group, and they were cheated out of a national softball championship. It's terrible. Roger Ailes, the reins behind Fox News Network, Fox News Channel, died this week at age 77. And that's it this week for the Georgia Gang. See you next week.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.